motherfucking levees was compromised. Just like they was in the 60s with Hurricane Betsy. You understand what I'm saying? My grandmother, who was in the Magnolia Project since his 40s, since Adolf Hitler. You can go home. He can go home. He can go home. He can go home. He can go home. But I can't go home. You know why? When I go home, TJ,
nice word.
Hold on, relax. You can bear me witness. When I go home, the projects ain't there. No. The buildings ain't there. They gone. Get the camera going. The bodega, hold on, relax. Relax, chill. I'm gonna do that, but let me say this first.
Yo, nigga, make sure you get home.
Let me say this first.
Fuck PPA.
When I go home,
make sure you get home.
The Magnolia projects ain't there. It ain't the same. The Calio projects ain't the same. The St. Thomas projects ain't the same. The St. Bernard projects ain't the same. The Florida projects ain't the same. Whether you from the 3rd ward, whether you from the 4th ward, whether you from the 9th ward, 7th ward, Hardheads. Shout out to Peter Muhammad, my nigga. Niggas know that when we go home, they raped us. The hurricane came. Hurricane Katrina. Listen at me. Hurricane Katrina came and it passed. It wasn't Hurricane Katrina that destroyed New Orleans. It was the compromisation of the levees that destroyed New Orleans. Just like they fucked up. Hold on. Just like the United States government. Look at me in my eyeballs. Hold on, relax. Relax. The United States government lied to us under the George Bush, under Donald Rumsfeld, under Dick Cheney, under Paul Wolfowitz, under CNN. They lied to us. They tried to make Colin Powell a devil. Respect. Hold on, my nigga. I'm talking real shit right now. I'm talking real shit right now. They tried to make it look like Colin Powell was the reason. No, that wasn't the reason. It was the devils that wanted to go to Iraq, that wanted to go to Iran, that wanted to go to Sudan. Hold on, relax. That told niggas, oh, the Somalis is pirates. We ain't no motherfucking pirates.
Speak on it, Jay.
We created the universe from darkness. We built the pyramids. We taught you civilization.
Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay. And now joining us again from our studio in Washington is Jordan Flaherty. He's the author of the book Floodlines, Community and Resistance from Katrina to the Genesis 6. Thanks for joining us again, Jordan.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure.
So one of the things that people have talked about after the Katrina is the role of the police and the armed forces particularly, but a lot has come to light about the role of the New Orleans police and abuses of power. Tell us a bit about what people are looking at, but also was this an anomaly where police went nuts in the course of the storm, or was this kind of normal New Orleans police behavior that is just getting looked at because of the storm?
The first thing to understand, Paul, is in those first days after the storm, suddenly the media coverage shifted from sympathy to the people trapped on rooftops, the victims of this disaster, to portraying people as criminals, as looters, as armed gangs roving the streets, shooting at police helicopters, raping infants. We later found out those stories were false, but they were propagated by the chief of police, who said that infants were being raped in the Superdome, by the mayor, who said that there was lawlessness on the street, that he declared martial law, even though no such thing exists under Louisiana law. The governor of the state of Louisiana, Kathleen Blanco at the time, said, "I'm sending in National Guard troops. They're locked and loaded. They've been trained to shoot to kill, and I expect they will."
Now, hang on for a second. You're saying there were no incidents, or some incidents were exaggerated to look like it was a bigger phenomena than it was?
I'm saying those incidents that were specifically talked about that were incredibly outrageous, like infants being raped in mass numbers in the Superdome. There was no raping of infants that anyone has documented that happened in the Superdome. Shooting at rescue helicopters, again, no one's documented where that happened, although that was widely talked about at the time. Another incident that was talked about, the second in charge of police department said he heard officers radioing in saying they needed more ammo. They were running out of ammo, like they were in a wartime situation. Again, this call never actually happened. So these major incidents that were talked about never happened. There were certainly people, both police officers and regular civilians, that were taking goods out of stores, mostly food and water, to feed people in their community. But the massive, violent outbreak that was talked about in the news that was used to demonize people, that actually didn't happen.
So why do people think the police were doing this? I mean, what's in it for them to exaggerate the issue?
I think it was a time of chaos. It's hard to imagine if you weren't in the city what it was like there, but we never imagined this entire city would be underwater. Everything was unimaginable. Everything seemed like we were in a fantasy world. And so many of the things that actually did happen seemed like they couldn't possibly have happened. For example, one thing that really did happen is people were trying to cross out of the city over the Crescent City Bridge, and they were met by armed police from the suburb of Gretna that didn't want people of New Orleans in their city, and they shot at the people from New Orleans and forced them to turn back. This seemed like fiction when we first heard about it. Many of the police killings that happened that period after Katrina seemed like fiction. It was hard to believe any of this. It was a time of almost mass hysteria.
To what extent did all of this have a class character? Meaning, I mean, obviously the poor were more affected and more of them were on the bridge. But was this actually like defending wealthy neighborhoods or just police afraid of some general anarchy?
It was both race and class. Overwhelming the people left in the city were poor and working class African Americans. There were many white folks that were left in the city. There were many middle class and upper class African Americans left. But the majority were poor and working class African Americans. And the fear was of poor black people in the city. That was what the fear was. And these incidents came out of this fear that these were criminals, these were gangs, and anything that needed to be done should be done to stop them. The second in charge of police department told officers, it's between you and your conscience what you want to do. If you can sleep with yourself at night, then you can do it.
And we have evidence of those instructions.
We have officers that testified that he heard that. The second in command of police department, who later became the chief of police, Warren Riley, has said he didn't say that, although he did say that we need to reclaim the streets. He says he did say that, and even that, according to criminal justice experts, sends a very mixed message to officers about what's right and what's allowed and what isn't.
Well, what investigations are going on and what's come out of them?
Well, some of the most notable ones are Henry Glover. This was an African-American man on the West Bank who was shot by one police sniper as he was picking through some bags that were in the back of a supermarket looking for supplies. He was then taken captive by other officers who saw a wounded black man and thought he must be a looter. And the next anyone saw of his body, it was burned to a crisp in the back of a car that was about a block from the police department. So people are investigating those officers. It seems likely that several officers will be charged, some already have been charged, with killing and setting his body on fire. On the same day, Danny Brumfield Sr. was one of thousands of people outside the convention center in New Orleans. He saw officers drive by with no help, no food, no water. He went running up to one police car. The police car deliberately hit him, and then officers shot him in the back in front of his family. This is another case that's being investigated. Perhaps the most notorious case is Danziger Bridge. Several civilians were fleeing New Orleans east into the center of New Orleans. They were unarmed. Police rolled up, again, assuming that these were criminals, that these were looters. And they just started firing on these unarmed civilians. 2 were killed, 4 were wounded, including Ronald Madison, a mentally challenged man who was shot in the back by one officer. Another officer ran up and kicked and stomped on him until he was dead. Among those people that were wounded, very serious injuries. One woman had her arm shot partly off. Another man required a colostomy bag. But it goes beyond the killings. When senior officers came upon the scene, they realized that this would not stand up well. And so they began a process of fabricating evidence, inventing witnesses, planting bullets, planting guns. They arrested Lance Madison, Ronald Madison's brother, and charged him under false charges of shooting at officers, held him in jail for several months. They had secret meetings over the following weeks to conspire and get their stories straight. And none of this came to light for years, even though the Madison family and others were trying against a wall of silence to get these stories out.
So how did they finally come out?
It's a really exciting and inspiring story, actually. Those families at the center were joined by grassroots activist groups like Safe Streets Strong Communities, which was a criminal justice reform organization, and the People's Hurricane Relief Fund, which was another organization. A former Black Panther who founded an organization called Common Ground named Malik Rahim told the story to whoever he could. Eventually, these documented stories were used as evidence that were passed on to Rebecca Solnit, a journalist from California, who passed it on to another journalist named A.C. Thompson, who wrote about it for ProPublica and The Nation. Armed with A.C. Thompson's investigation, activists then went to a new Justice Department under Eric Holder and lobbied them to perform the investigations. And finally, the investigations began to happen. But this now, we're talking about 2009 that we finally saw those investigations of what happened in 2005.
Lohman admitted he helped cover up for 7 fellow officers who shot shootings. Federal officials say Lohman allowed an investigator to plant a clean gun under the bridge to make it look like the victims shot at officers first, even though he knew they were in fact unarmed.
And what other evidence that this isn't just a few sociopathic cops or freaked out cops? What other evidence is showing this is more systemic or coming from a culture established at more senior levels?
Well, A.C. Thompson has documented 10 separate shootings around the city within a period of a couple days of unarmed civilians being shot. So already the widespread nature of it is one aspect of the evidence. But the details of the crimes, I think, show the systemic nature of this as well. For example, on Danziger Bridge, you had one officer, as he's writing the report, he's in a room filled with officers, and he yells out, "I need a name." And another officer yells back, "Lakeisha." And he writes down Lakeisha Smith, and this later became one of the fabricated witnesses that they used. The fact that they felt comfortable inventing witnesses in front of a room full of officers shows that this goes beyond bad apples and goes to systemic problems.
To what extent do people involved in this think this is an extension of a police culture that existed before Katrina, or is it something that happened in the craziness of Katrina?
You know, we have 2 officers that are facing the death penalty for pre-Katrina crimes from the 90s. For assassinations that they carried out. They're locked in prison currently. We have some of the cases that the feds are investigating right now include Raymond Robert, who was badly beaten by officers in the months before Katrina. There's dozens of other cases from the period, from the years before Katrina, that activists are asking the Justice Department to look into. So definitely there's a feeling that this is a department with a long history of corruption. The police chief from 1994 to 2002, Richard Pennington, ended up firing or disciplining or transferring more than 500 officers during his time. He worked with the federal government to try and root out corruption. And even many of the observers from that time said he only began to scratch the surface of a notoriously corrupt department.
Are people satisfied with the role of the federal attorney general or not?
People are saying that the feds need to go further. It seems very likely that there will be some form of federal oversight of the department. The new police chief admits it, the mayor admits it and says that he welcomes it. The question is, what form will this oversight take? Will it bring the systemic change that people are asking for, or will it be small cosmetic change? And that's the battle that's happening right now in the streets of New Orleans.
Thanks for joining.
Hi guys. Black America is potentially the most dangerous group of humans alive today. Dangerous to who? Dangerous to the corporate empire, Illuminati, imperial scum, whatever you want to call them, white supremacists. Why are they dangerous? Well, there's 45 million black Americans. And the reason they're dangerous is because they're quite easily united. It might seem not true because there's so much division within black people in America, but the only reason they're divided is because the corporate empire spends billions of dollars keeping them divided because they are potentially dangerous. What makes them dangerous? Well, 45 million people united in the US would be very dangerous. What kind of things is dangerous? Well, you might think I'm talking about protesting or getting together and rallying and that kind of stuff. Well, no, that's not dangerous, because the US can handle that stuff. They're set up for it. They can imprison an indefinite amount of people. That's not the kind of danger I'm talking about. 45 million people united could do some serious damage to the financial market. I mean, if you had 45 million united people that got together and decided they're going to create an alliance and they're going to decide on a daily basis how they spend their money, that would be dangerous. The thing that threatens the corporate empire, Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, the thing that really threatens them is a group that can control their bank accounts. So really, for me, it's really simple. Black America needs to unite for one reason: to control how black money is spent. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. If Black America united 100% and created websites, Facebook, whatever, a way where there's a body or a board or whatever, and you guys decide how you're going to spend your money on a daily basis, it's a game changer. It means that you control the scum that is oppressing you. They will not be able to handle that. It's a big thing. I know it's a really hard thing to organize, but you can do it because Black America is a united people, really. They're a natural race that identifies with each other and supports each other, really. I mean, the divisions are just corporate empire scum investing money into keeping you guys divided. So I'd forget about it. Don't even think that you can't do it, because you can. And it's that simple. Control how black money is spent and you win the game.
Peace. I'm Rami Salam El. Thank you for joining us. On this episode of Occult History, we're going to be examining James Traficant's U.S. bankruptcy speech. But before we do, I wanted to read for the record the definition of bankruptcy from, Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. It is on page 186, and it reads, "The condition of one who has committed an act of bankruptcy and is liable to be proceeded against by his creditors therefore." Further down, "The proceedings taken under the bankrupt law against a person or firm or company to have him adjudged a bankrupt and to have his estate administered for the benefit of the creditors and divided among them." Why is that important? Grab a pen and paper. Let's find out. The bankruptcy of the United States. United States Congressional Record, March 17th, 1993, Volume 33, page H1303. Speaker, Republican James Traficant Jr., Traficant of Ohio, addressing the House. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11. Members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9th, 1933, 48 Statute Number 1, Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt, being bankrupt and insolvent. Let me read that sentence again. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9th, 1933, 48 Statute 1, Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt, being bankrupt and insolvent. HJR House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress, Session June 5th, 1933, Joint Resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolve the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. All United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status, DEFACTO, de facto status, in name only, under emergency war powers. With the constitutional republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. This new form of government is known as a democracy, being an established socialist and communist order under a new governor for America. This act was instituted and established by transferring and or placing the office of the Secretary of Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund. Public Law 94-564, page 8, section House Resolution 13955 reads in part, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Gold and silver was such a powerful money during the founding of the United States of America that the Founding Fathers declared that only gold and silver coins can be money in America. Since gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored at banks and a claim check was issued as a money substitute. People traded their coupons as money or currency. Currency is not money, but a money substitute. Redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes make no such promises and are not money. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government, not money. The federal United States government and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver coin. It is essential that we comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitute. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper into debt. We the people no longer have any money. Most Americans have not been paid any money for a very long time. Perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now do you understand why you are bankrupt, along with the rest of the country?
Talk to us about how important meditation is and how can that help?
Oh, wow.
in the sense of, you know, with all this violence going on and just different things in the street, how can that balance you out? Well, how does meditation help?
From my perspective, when I first started doing meditation, it was a straight up thing that you did it twice a day for 20 minutes. and they gave you a mantra, and you practiced that mantra. And as I moved through the process, what I began to realize is that meditation takes you down into an area of aloneness. See, we have to understand the difference between being alone and being lonely. And there's a big difference. We tend to believe that we need to socialize with people. And I think that is because many of us are afraid to go within ourselves, to see ourselves. Meditation allows you, even if you just look at the word, you learn yourself and you take yourself down into yourself. And you begin to know yourself from a spiritual perspective. And you spend quiet time with yourself. Find out more about you. You calm yourself down. You relax. It's quite a wonderful experience when you learn how to do it, because you come to understand who you are. And meditation allows you to calm yourself down to a level where you can begin to develop a deeper understanding of yourself. But the point is I believe personally that I never meditate so I can feel better. I meditate so I can get down into an area that when I come back out, I can share it with other people. See, a lot of people say meditation made me feel good.
More for connection.
That's what it is. Right. Absolutely.
Right.
To sharpen your aura.
Right.
To shine your colors.
Right.
To perfect your flavor.
Right.
And to be able to do that, because under those conditions, you also make yourself a very dangerous adversary. Because it's like charging a battery.
Right. Right.
So that same peace that you have also gives you the right and the power to be able to do what you need to do. And you see, like I tell folk about the energy, a lot of times we just get all bent out of shape in our emotions and in our anger.
Right.
And I tell people, you need to preserve that energy.
Right.
Meditation helps you to build that energy within you. It allows the melanin to begin to flow through your body, through your cerebrospinal fluid. Because when you are dealing with this concept of the word the letter M is the only letter that we pronounce that your mouth must be closed. You see, N, B, K, S, all of your mouth is open.
Right.
But to say M, your mouth must be closed. Because of that, it causes you to vibrate. And there is a place within your olfactory bowl behind your head. It's called the Shittite. And our ancient Egyptians built a temple of man in Kemet. And to be specific, in door number 5, in room number 5 and room number 12, they're connected. However, there's something called transposition. When our ancestors carved on the stone, what they did is that they carved an image on one side, like on one of, say on one side of the wall of 5. They then, connecting it to room 12, they also carved. But to understand the full documentation, you had to make 5 and 12 come together in one, and that's how you get the full message. So what they were saying is that when we breathe, but what the air that comes through passes through the olfactory into our system.
Right.
So what they were actually developing is a way that you could understand the spiritual systems of the human body, and it was called the Shittite. So when you go you feel a vibration. When I do this with folk, I say, search for where it's vibrating. Search for where you feel that tickle. And it's right behind your olfactory bulb. That is where all of your senses come together and meet. In that area, there is a richness of cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid has 13 times the amount of melanin that your blood system has. What happens is that water starts to vibrate when you that vibration, that tickling is vibrating that water, that cerebrospinal fluid, which then from that point it takes you down into a level of understanding. And this is what they said, searching for nirvana, searching for the 0 point in the universe. That is when you become one with the vibrations of the cosmic universe. It's called Schumann's resonance, so to speak. It's a 7.5 cycle per second. That when you start vibrating on that level, that's the meditation that you're going after.
Right.
And as you begin to go deeper and deeper into this area, your brain opens up, and the Akashic record is like you turning the pages of the history of the cosmic universe.
Wow.
And you begin to come down inside of yourself. And when you come up, you feel in a way, at least from my own personal experiences, when you do that, and sometimes I may do it for 10 minutes, sometimes I do it for 5 minutes, sometimes I do it for 20 minutes, sometimes I do it and I fall asleep. When I wake up, I just keep trying to get it done. But meditation allows you to come one with yourself. What Rasta say, I and I. I and I is not just the I of the physical, it's the I of the spiritual. And it becomes very important for you to be able to do that and understand that and develop a system of doing that. When you feel that pressure, when you've had a bad day, you go back. Because when you look at the letter when you get a good idea, what do you say? When you taste something good, what do you say? You always close your mouth to vibrate when you are expressing a sense.
So would there be some significance because the M is shaped like two pyramids?
There could also be, but also that is the letter, that is the owl in the alphabet. It's the 13th letter, by the way.
13th letter.
And it's represented by the owl. And when you look at the pictograph of an owl, the owl has the script of the letter. Every letter came out of Medunetta. The script of the M is in the chest of the owl. It's in the horns of the owl. It's in the face of the owl. You see, there is no Greek script. It doesn't exist. The Rosetta Stone is a stone that people said had hieroglyphs of Medunetta on the top. Then it had the hieratic writing, which is a script coming out of hieroglyphs of Medunetta. And then the bottom one they say is classical Greek. That's not classical Greek. That's another African script that Greeks took. So when we're talking to our children and we're talking to them about the alphabet, what we are actually doing is we are writing an African script. There is a book, Hieroglyphics, The Art of Writing by Kwasi Milton. There is another book called The Historical Origins of Christianity by Dr. Walter Williams. They have charts that literally will show you step by step how the Ethiopian Coptic letters gave birth to the Egyptian Coptic letters, gave birth to the Greek letters, gave birth to the Roman letters. And the bottom line that we're looking at as we move through is that when we're in school and we're writing our ABCs, we are literally writing an African script, but we don't know it because we don't know our history.
That's tight.
See, you know, once we get to that point, all things change.
All things change.
When you know better, you do better.
Right about that.
Alright, so thank you for coming out and sitting down with the Center magazine. I'm just going to ask you a couple questions. If you just want to start by introducing yourself.
Thank you, I appreciate the platform. My name is Malcolm Shabazz, and I'm the grandson, the namesake, and first male heir of a great Muslim revolutionary leader by the name of Hajj Shabazz, or more widely known to the masses as Mr. Malcolm X.
Thank you. So how has growing up the grandson of Malcolm X shaped who you are today, and what does it mean to you?
Oftentimes growing up, it was as if I had a magnifying glass on top of me, or if I was under a microscope, and people often expected me to be a certain type of way because of the family I come from and who my grandfather is, and oftentimes I rebelled against that. And today I don't think that it's necessarily beneficial to encourage someone to fill someone else's shoes or to expect someone to fill somebody else's shoes, but each individual should be encouraged to grow within their own shoes, to grow within who they are. I often use this analogy when people ask me this question. It's as you're growing up as the grandson of Malcolm X has been a blessing, and at other times I wouldn't say a curse, but it could also be a disadvantage. And it could be a disadvantage when it comes to in terms of dealing with various businessmen, government officials, and politicians, and racist, sadistic KKK type officers who have it against me simply because of my family lineage. But it's been a blessing in terms of being able to connect with other revolutionary spirited and military minded individuals from all over the world, from the son of Kwame Nkrumah. The daughter of Kwame Nkrumah, Samia Nkrumah, the son of Patrice Lumumba, Minister of Information, JR, Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., Yuri Kachiyama. So to be able to connect with these revolutionary spirited individuals, that has been a blessing. The analogy I'm speaking of is you can invite somebody to your house and you could offer them a meal, and they might eat that meal, and maybe they get sick and they throw up all over your brand new carpet, but still you'll be hospitable towards them. Maybe you'll help them clean up the mess, or maybe you make sure that they're okay. But with me, it was always as if I could walk up the sidewalk and I could spit on the street, and everybody would look like, well, what the hell is wrong with him? He just spit on the street. So, I'm doing that.
Could you, guys, sorry, I'm trying to do an interview. So my next question for you is, how have you ever overcome the mistakes of your troubled past? And what do you think was your motivation behind your actions?
I've made, edit this?
Yes.
I think a little bit about that question. What's the question?
Well, we'll start with the first part. How have you ever overcome the mistakes of your troubled youth?
Each man is like a grain of salt towards the building block of civilization. So we shouldn't always focus on what others are or aren't willing to do, but on what we're willing to do. And in the Quran, it states that our Lord is He who gave all things its creation, and then He Himself guided it. And we must also bear in mind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also states in the Quran that man is made in toil and struggle, to struggle. So I never really regret any particular situation or circumstance, but to realize that there were certain obstacles that are placed at certain intervals in my life which should only serve to make us stronger. And I've often found myself in many situations where I ask myself, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? But today I do have a better understanding of why I personally went through the things that I went through.
And what do you consider to be the most important part of your grandfather's legacy?
For me, I believe that the most important aspect to my grandfather is that he was never set in his ways. He was on a constant search for truth, and he was very sincere. He was an Islamic scholar. He didn't speak fluent Arabic. He wasn't going to break down hadith and start quoting all these things from the Quran, but he affected more change than people who may have studied Islam 20, 30 years or their whole lives. It's because he was very sincere, and he was always on a constant search for truth, and he was never unwilling to admit his previous mistakes or work on correcting his errors and flaws.
And what do you think is the most important piece of advice you can give to today's youth?
The most important advice I could give to today's youth is not to always react from emotion, because many times we find ourselves in positions where we're quick to react. We get angry or whatever other emotion that we're feeling, and we act on the emotion, and then we might find ourselves in a situation, and I'm speaking for myself, I've been in a situation many times where I might be sitting in a cell, or I might have to suffer some repercussion for something that I did out of anger or out of dealing with my emotions, and then I find myself in a position where I think to myself, man, I could have did this, that, and the third differently, or why did I do that like that, but it's too late. So many times what we need to do when something happens, instead of just being quick to be a reactionary, we need to be more revolutionary. But we need to sit back and let that emotion pass, know what we're feeling, but let it pass. Sometimes you need to sleep on it, wait a day or two, and then see how you feel. Because many times if you let the emotion pass and you sit back and look at it on an analytical level, you won't react in the same manner. So that's very important. That's one of the advices I would give.
Awesome. And lastly, would you give a shout out to the Center Magazine?
Center Magazine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here is this is some maps, and this map here shows Atlantis and Moor. Here's North America, and they say that when you go through the Straits of Gibraltar, the Pillars of Hercules, there's an island, a series of smaller islands, and a whole continent, which is North, South, and Central America. What sunk, or what was destroyed, was actually the island of Atlantis, and this wasn't no 10,000, 20,000 years ago. This was in much more recent times. I'm talking about as recent as 1500 BC. 1500, not 15,000, 1500 BC, and this was dealing with the so-called floods in the Bible Exodus, the cataclysms, worldwide cataclysms that was taking place. This is also the time when Sahara Desert became desert. This is in recent times dealing with the breakup of this particular empire here, and it was based on worldwide cataclysms. And here you see Moor or Lemuria in the Pacific Ocean. All one thing. They'll tell you that, and their scientists, their geologists will tell you that, because you can see how America and Africa fit together like a puzzle. I even went so far as one day to cut out this edge on the map and cut out this edge of the map and bring the two together. And they fit together perfectly, except for there's a space right in the middle where Atlantis would have been at. And their scientists will tell you that, oh, them continents, they separated millions and millions and millions of years ago. There was no humans around at that time. We're talking about these things taking place as recently, the last of these things taking place as recently as 1500 BC. Their scientists would love you to have you to believe this whole gradual evolution, you know, the continents separating 1 inch per year type of thing. We're talking about major catastrophes that took place. And I'm going to get into this at a later date. I want to do a lecture on just showing you how the actual foundations of this whole European world order has been totally destroyed already by their own scholars. But these scholars, they put in the background because they don't want you to know about them. And one of them name is Immanuel Velikovsky, and I must talk more about him. But he gets to this whole cataclysmic thing about this planet and the different cataclysms that took place as recently dealing with the planet Venus. We think planet Venus has always been there. Planet Venus was a comet that at one point came so close to Earth, it caused the destructions that took place, and then it settled in the orbit that we now see as Venus. And this was symbolized as Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, the flying fiery serpent was symbolized in Venus when it came very close to the Earth. And different things in the Bible and Exodus about the plagues and all that stuff and mentioned in the Bible confirm this cataclysm that took place. But I'm going to save that for another lecture. Here we have another map, because the elders always taught us that all the original places, all of them was original places and place names of places over here, and was at a later date transferred overseas to confuse us, because when the European came to power, what he did was change up chronology and geography, or the time-space coordinates, to disorientate us. So we don't know where we at. Here's an old map of America, showing old names, and here you have Tripoli, Morocco, Tunis, Turkey, Atlantis, Egypt, Patmos, the Globe Theater, which was tied in with Shakespeare, Shakespeare's Globe Theater, Francis Bacon and all of them, Moab, the Moabites, Cairo, Illinois, because where that part of the Nile or the Mississippi comes, they call that whole region Little Egypt. And you have a place there right there called Cairo. Mecca, Yucatan, Lebanon, all these are place names that's still here to this day. This is off an old postcard. Some brother or sister came up to me on 125th Street and just handed it to me. A lot of stuff just comes from many diverse sources. And with regards to the word Amexem, or what we use Amexem, this is the old, what they call Portolano map. And here you see it says, it's hard to see, but it says North America or Mex. Because the word Mexico came from the word Amexem. And the word Mex is up here, nowhere near what we call Mexico, which means that North America or Mex, Amexem. That's what we refer to it as, Amexem. And here's just some other things that I threw in here. This is a picture of George Washington Carver. He was one of the greatest scientists known on the planet. He was a master alchemist. This man, get to know him better, because this man was a master. He was one of the Europeans referred to him as the Egyptian pharaoh. He was a master, and you always see him with this rose right here. The original Rose Croix, Rosicrucian. He was a master. The things he done, yeah, my brother.
That brother really talked about in a book called The Secret Life of Plants.
Yes, indeed, brother. Man, I mean, people think that he just took the peanut and was just, breaking it down. I mean, just mixing, making different stuff out of it. He was breaking the whole molecular structure down of the peanut and then rearranging it molecularly. In other words, making it into wires, fibers, plastics. I mean, he took something that grew, we call them goobers. They grew so much where we came from in the South and so on and so forth. He said, well, let's take something that we have. He was able to put together a whole 5-course meal with drinks, dessert, everything just from the peanut.
synthetic stuff coming from?
Exactly. All this, you hear about all the synthetic stuff, like where they make synthetic flavors and all that stuff like this. All that came from him. Taking the plant, I mean, see, I always thought that he was just taking a plant and mashing it up and maybe just, making stuff out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, just mashing it up. I didn't know the brother was actually breaking down the molecular structure of the peanut and then reorganizing the molecular structure. I mean, that's a whole, he was dealing with stuff, man. This man was a genius. He was one of the greatest scientists that ever lived, period. I also threw this into the mix. And I've got to leave some time for questions, so I'm just hitting you with a couple of things here and there. This is taken from a pamphlet that I published called the Ben Ismail Tribe, the hidden history of the Moors who later led to the rise of Garvey, the Nation of Islam, and Moor science. Here's a group of so-called Indians, or as the white man was taking over the eastern seaboard, they all packed up to go further west, and they referred to themselves as the Ben Ismail Tribe, led by a man named Ben Ismail. Now, why would a group of Indians call themselves the Ben Ismail Tribe? And why, when they go to Indiana, Illinois, why would they set up a migration pattern shaped like our Great Seal, and they call the cities that they migrated from Mecca, Morocco, and Muhammad? This is supposed to be Indians, so-called Delaware Indians in them. Why would they call themselves Ben Ismail and set up such a migration pattern shaped just like our seal? And it goes in there because these were the first ones they actually practiced and perfected genocide on. And it was later studied by Hitler. And it almost sounds like the Republican Party. I came across this right when the Republicans came in office, and they talked about how we're going to cut them off for public assistance. The men we're going to lock up in the prisons, which was the first prison systems that was built to lock them up. We're going to put the women in shelters and reformatories and put their kids in orphanages. I said, man, this is the Republican Party platform. Which means they actually was implementing something that was perfected on us a long time ago. It was so successful that they finally broke up the Ben Ismail Tribe, and they went to the cities of Chicago and Detroit, and later became some of the key founders of the Garvey movement and the Moor Science Temple. So this is the root of the root. It goes even further back. And like I said, this is so-called Delaware Indians, a collection of different tribes who was displaced on the eastern seaboard, got together and migrated west and called themselves the Ben Ismail Tribe. And there's another pamphlet I published called the Nanticoke Moor Folk Medicines, talk about how the Nanticotes and the Delawares refer to themselves as Moors. To this day, refer to themselves as Moors. And the Europeans say, well, why are they calling themselves Moors? To this day. There's so much about this history that we walking daily on the land of our ancestors, don't even realize it. We looking towards Africa, all this, giving up all this right here. And people think Garvey wasn't talking about all of us going back to Africa. He was talking about the scientists and engineers going there.
True hip-hop culture versus the alternative.
Well, we have certain spellings of hip-hop. At the Temple of Hip-Hop, there are 3 spellings of hip-hop. First spelling, capital H-I-P-H-O-P, one word. So it's spelled hip-hop. That's the way it looks. But it's hip-hop. Capital H-I, lowercase I, lowercase p, lowercase h, lowercase o, lowercase p, one word. That is hip-hop as consciousness. Because we've realized that hip-hop never came into physical existence. The term hip-hop is an idea.
Right.
You can't go to it technically. You can't wear it, drink it, eat it. It's a shared idea, and when you actually look at it. So we first look at hip-hop as its non-physical conscious existence. We're all sharing in this idea. Mm-hmm. So we named that capital H-I-P-H-O-P, hip-hop, one word. That hip-hop, when you realize that the only way that hip-hop comes into physical manifestation is when you say, I am hip-hop. Mm-hmm. When you say, I am hip-hop, then that non-physical term becomes physical as you. Now you start breaking, MCing, graffiti writing, DJing, beatboxing, certain way you wear your clothes, talk, etc. That's capital H, lowercase I, lowercase p, space, capital H, lowercase o, lowercase p. Hip hop, the traditional spelling as spelled first on the side of a train in the movie Beat Street. In the movie Beat Street, the first public display or mainstream display of the spelling of hip-hop came through Beat Street in a scene where Ram 1 actually finishes his piece. It says, "Hip hop, you don't stop," and then Spit, his rival, crosses it out. So, but when the movie first came out, that's when we saw hip hop out of ourselves onto a screen, and the spelling was capital H-I-P, capital H-O-P, hip hop. Africa Bambaata's been spelling hip hop with a capital H in all of his flyers since day one. And also hip hop is a proper noun, or it can be looked at as a proper noun. It is a specific thing. It is the title of a specific group of people. So when you spell hip hop, you spell it capital H, lowercase I, lowercase p, space, capital H, lowercase o, lowercase p. That's hip hop.
So you got to watch your spelling.
You do have to watch your spellings. I mean, but it's a shame because we all refer to hip hop as culture. We refer to it as a community. We all talk about ourselves as a community. But then when you open up Vibe magazine or Double XL, you get hip hop in these lowercase h's when they talk about that. Now, hip hop, lowercase h, lowercase I, lowercase p, space or dash, lowercase h, lowercase o, lowercase p, that hip hop is regarded as rap music product and its related events. So basically the radio, the hip hop they play on the radio is lowercase h-I-P, lowercase h-o-p. Not because the record is that, but because the record now, the consciousnip has become the artist, and the artist has now become the product, the CD or whatever it is. That product is lowercase h-I-P, lowercase h-o-p. Hip-hop spelt in lowercase is the product that comes from the culture. So you have the first spelling as consciousness, which creates the culture, which creates the product. So this is the totality of hip-hop in and of itself, consciousness to culture to product.